Buenos días. Me llamo Mark y estoy muy agradecido de estar con un grupo tan especial y tan inteligente este fin de semana. Perdón, ahorita voy a cambiar al inglés, ¿ok? So, about me, quickly, I am a nerd, and I come from the land of nerds, also known as MIT. And I have many interests. I love philosophy and economics, but also blockchain technology and artificial intelligence. And I have the privilege of working at a really cool place called the MIT Media Lab, which is an innovation center at MIT where they essentially put all the misfits who don't fit in neat little boxes to work on cool projects that are especially informed by thinking how we can make the world a better place through the use of data science and technology, artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and other innovations. I specifically work for the Digital Currency Initiative, which was started by Joey Ito. He's the man on the left, not the man on the right. He started this a few years ago as a response to this emergent innovation called Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was started in 2009 as an open source project released by an unknown person or persons, but has since been collaborated on by some of the best computer scientists in the world. And the vision for Bitcoin, we think, was motivated in response to the financial crisis, motivated by concern about the hyper-centralization and consolidation of power in our economic systems, in the financial system specifically, and how this power is causing all kinds of problems, how this centralization of power is running rampant in our world. So our group has a number of different projects and working groups. We staff 2 of the Bitcoin lead developers, and we gather together research scientists, professors, and students to hack on some of the most pressing issues, which include currency, but go far beyond just currency. Things like, how do we manage medical data? How do we manage property rights? How can we use this in autonomous vehicles? How can we use this in supply chains and finance? It's more than just currency, and I'll explain a bit about how that works. First, for those of you who are not too familiar with the technology, let me try to give you a crash course. I'm told I have an extra 2 hours, so we should have plenty of time. No, but seriously, this is short, so for those of you Bitcoin enthusiasts, please excuse some oversimplifications. Here I have an image of a distributed network. This is central. This is one of the central themes of what Bitcoin pioneered and has since inspired many copycats and iterations in different ways. A distributed network is easy to understand if we think about this much more simply. Imagine we are a village, and I am the village elder, and as the village elder, I keep the ledger of all the economic activity in our village. And every time Juan wants to pay Maria for a bag of coffee, you announce that transaction to me, and on a ledger of debits and credits, I will update the ledger accordingly so that I know how much Juan has and how much Maria now has. Can anybody see how this system might go awry? Imagine somebody bribes me so that I change the ledger. Or imagine I make a mistake and I lose the ledger. Or imagine somebody puts a gun to my head and makes me say that one person has more than they really should have. Again, this is not just currency. Imagine I was keeping this record of who owned which plots of land, or who had registrations and licenses to do business or to have a nonprofit. There's currency, but there's also the records, okay? Now, in a distributed system, instead of me keeping the ledger, each and every one of you has a copy of the ledger. And every time there's a transaction, every time Maria pays Juan or Juan pays Maria, we announce it to the entire group, and all of us updates our ledger accordingly. And if there's ever a dispute, majority rules, 51% rules. Now, even in a group like this, it'd be very difficult to build a coalition to corrupt this ledger. But imagine now this group is distributed all over the world, and imagine how much more difficult it is to gain that 51% majority you need to collude on what this ledger actually says. That's the power of the Bitcoin network. People are downloading, each and every one of you can download a software program and run a Bitcoin node, run this ledger, and be a part of a network that keeps a ledger of credits and debits about who owns what and how much. Okay? The interesting thing, and by the way, I'm sure some of you have heard about Bitcoin being used for illicit activity, and maybe others of you have heard about how it's going to revolutionize every aspect of our lives just as the internet has. And both of those have some truth, but both are, have some oversimplifications. So I encourage you to try to do some research at home and look at this more with a blank slate. Rather than getting too deep into the technicalities of the cryptography and the game theory and these aspects, I want to use these 7 quick minutes that I have to speak to the deeper human why that drives this technology and drives my interest. As somebody who, 5 years ago was producing documentary films on international development and poverty and is now building software prototypes with blockchain technology, how did I arrive from point A to point B? And it has to do with some of these deeper questions. What is money? And what is money? What is the role of government, of national government in an increasingly global world? We're seeing shifts from national to global, from centralized to distributed, from intermediated exchange to peer-to-peer exchange, and from closed systems to open ones. And even deeper, as I said, there are these questions of what is money, what is a market, what is wealth even? For me, it's very helpful, just as in the village analogy, to think about this at a basic human level, to abstract away all of these other aspects and complexities of global markets and just think about what is a market at a deeply human level. So allow me to introduce Mohammed. Mohammed is a fruit vendor. He's 26 years old. He's a micro-entrepreneur. Mohammed's brother died when he was, or his father died when he was 3. And so for as long as he can remember, he has been the sole economic provider, the primary economic provider for his mother and his family of 5, his 5 siblings. Every night, Mohammed gets a microloan to buy fruit, and every morning he takes that fruit to the marketplace and sells it to make about $10 a day. And every single day, he's harassed by local police officers who take his fruit without paying for it, or ask for bribes arbitrarily or fines for not having a formal business license. Over 50% of people across North Africa are in the informal economy, unprotected by the rule of law, unprotected by justice, and have no recourse. But everybody has their breaking point, and on one December day, Mohammed hits his. An inspector named Faida Hamdi demands a bribe for an unpaid fine. He doesn't have it, so she confiscates his fruit. She confiscates his electronic scales. She bans him from the marketplace forever. He petitions, and this is not just his things, this is his livelihood. This is food on the table for his family, not just that night, but every day going forward. He goes to the governor's office to try to get his stuff back. They toss him out without seeing him. And he looks at that lifeless building, and he looks at the street moving on, the world turning on without him, and he realizes he is invisible. And he screams at the building, "How do you expect me to make a living? If you don't see me, I'll burn myself." And he realizes that they don't see him, and they never will. And so he takes a gallon of gasoline, he pours it all over himself, and he lights himself on fire. He burns himself alive. This was the beginning of the Arab Spring revolutions. Dozens and dozens of entrepreneurs, micro-entrepreneurs across North Africa lit themselves on fire. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets. Governments were toppled. Why? The news media told us it was about income inequality and corruption at the highest levels of government. But the Peruvian economist Hernando de Soto interviewed Bouazizi's family and interviewed all of his family members and survivors of the people who lit themselves on fire, and every single one of them was a micro-entrepreneur just trying to make a living but could not because of corruption at the lowest levels of government, because the systems of economic exchange and the institutions of justice were broken, and there was no hope. What does this have to do with blockchain? Almost nothing, and yet everything. Because blockchain technology is about building better ecosystems for exchange, for value exchange, for economic exchange, for record keeping, so that our institutions of justice can be stronger. I wish I had more time to talk about some of the work we've been doing here in Mexico. With the Mexican government, your Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Economy is interested in how we can use the Bitcoin blockchain and other blockchains as systems of record so that things like land title can be secured on an unchangeable ledger and can't be changed by some corrupt officer down in the future. How we can open up SME finance for small, medium-sized enterprises to access credit and resolve the $2.6 trillion SME credit cap that the World Bank has studied. There are so many aspects of economic exchange that can be improved, and blockchain technology is not the end-all, be-all. It is one exciting technology that I encourage all of you to learn more about. But what I want you to remember today is not the technology. It's that there are people here in Mexico just like Mohamed Bouazizi. There are people who just want to make a living. And we've got to stop using, we need to create more jobs as this like political, meaningless slogan. And we have to get down and dirty. We have to roll up our sleeves and think about the deep complexity, property rights, contract law, business registration, financial regulation. Too often regulation has been used by those in power to raise the barriers of entry to the marketplace, to protect the incumbent positions of those in power. Freedom and justice are seen as two poles. We can't have both. If we have more freedom, we have less justice. If we have more justice, we have less freedom. That is false. We need freer institutions and ecosystems and more just institutions and ecosystems, and we can do both. Technology can help, but it is also about how we govern and organize society. So I encourage you to think about Mohamed Bouazizi and try to find the Mohamed Bouazizis here in Mexico and try to apply your own unique talents and perspectives to making their life better. Thank you.